Redditors who have hired a private investigator, what did you find out? My mother's dad walked out on mom, my aunt, and my grandmother when mom was just 5. A few years later, my grandmother died of a grand mal seizure. Mom was taken in by her grandparents, but she always wondered why her dad left and what became of him. In her 40s, she saved up a bit and hired a PI to track him down. Turns out he moved over time from Pittsburgh to California, where he wound up in prison for armed robbery and other violent crimes. He died in San Quentin Penitentiary. I think mom got a lot of closure out of that. She was able to see that life would have most likely been even worse had he stayed. At least living with her grandparents, she was loved and raised to fulfill her potential. Next story. My grandmother's first boyfriend after my grandfather died said he was a retired cop and a veteran. They enjoyed dancing to country music together, and bought a new car, in her name though, even though she can't drive anymore. My uncles hired a PI. Turns out, that old crap had a habit of shacking up with widows and bleeding them dry. The boyfriend, not the PI. Next story. My sister, mid-30s, is adopted and hired one to find her estranged biological father. They came back saying that not only was he still alive and nearby, but he had a daughter. Meaning she also had a biological sibling. Further digging from the PI uncovered that they weren't just similar ages either, they were exactly the same age. The evidence suggested that my sister had a twin and her birth father had taken the twin and vanished. Huge, life-changing news. Eventually, through more incredible detective work, the PI realized that the daughter was actually just my sister. There was no other sibling and they had just been investigating my sister the whole time accidentally. Needless to say, we asked for the money back. TLDR, sister hired a private investigator accidentally investigated sister. Next story. When I met my wife, she seemed to have a normal modern family. 2 moms, 2 dads. Over time it became apparent her stepdad wasn't around much. Holidays, birthdays, you name it, he'd pop in to say hi, grab a nap, whatever, then take off again. My wife's family thought this was normal, just the way it had always been since they were teenagers. He claimed to have a job following FedEx trucks around the state to prevent theft and drug trafficking. But I thought it strange and started making jokes about him having another family. Well, I guess it got my sister-in-law thinking because she gets a favor from the PI at her law firm. Sure enough, he has not 2 but 3 wives around the state, and 5 other stepchildren between them. My sister-in-law breaks the news to her mother, who immediately changes the locks and files for divorce. They never speak again. Cold turkey. Divorce is even uncontested. As a FU they also send the report to his other wives. Edit, I thought I was late to the thread so I wasn't expecting as many reactions. Thanks for the gold. To answer some of the questions. Yes, polygamy is illegal, but it's not really worth prosecuting except to make an example of people. I don't know if my mill was his first wife or not. I do know that one of the wives had been married and divorced him between their marriage. How does it happen? Counties don't exactly share marriage certificates. His families were pretty far from each other. Was their wedding legal? No idea, Ian Al. Probably the separation was just a formality for paperwork purposes, which is why it went to court, why it went uncontested, and why he never showed up again. I think he reached out once or twice, but she never answered the phone. And if he ever showed up again, we weren't told about it. My mill is a strong independent woman of faith who just didn't know. He fooled his stepdaughters for 15 years too. Next story. My story is a little different. I had a PI investigate me. About 6 years ago I became very ill with a variety of issues that left me really quite poorly. I was an optician, and so using my hands with arthritis was just never going to be a plan. So I applied for UK disability support. I sailed through and started receiving a monthly amount. Now, fast forward a few years. I then start getting restless at home, so I retrain into a job that doesn't involve my hands. I stop receiving money, except for the benefit you can get while you work. I use it for paying a better automatic car off. Well, my very nasty mother's friend saw me start work and called the benefits office, assuming I was still claiming. Unfortunately, she exaggerated and told them I was living a normal life and even running daily. So the benefits office filmed and watched me. They thought they had an aha. Gotcha moment. Their PI provided photos of me walking unaided. When I sat in the meeting, with a lot of smug fraud officers and my solicitor, I felt sick to my stomach. I really couldn't work out what the F was going on. They were trying to make it look like I had been running and jogging, but I knew I walked never any further than 5 meters to my car. Anyway, solicitor pointed out the photos were screenshots of a video. Asked for the videos. Videos were of me struggling to walk. One of them I rest on my car before opening my door. Another I was going into a supermarket and had replaced my cane with a trolley to lean on. You get the picture. So, the fraud team basically said oops, and I never heard from them again. I spent a lot of my time trying to appear normal and it bit me in the arse. And never trust these fraud TV shows now either. Edit, holy moly, I just opened up Reddit after dinner and saw all these comments. For those asking. I no longer speak with my mother, so I'm not sure if she is still friends. The lady did it because quite honestly I think she is brainwashed into thinking anyone who claims benefits must be scummy. I am doing well, thank you for asking. I started methotrexate last year and it seems to be holding me quite steady. Next story. Hadn't heard from my mom since I was about 15, very unstable due to drugs and alcohol etc. When I was 29, I decided it was time to find out what happened to her. I figured if she was a Jane Doe somewhere, then I could put her to rest, and if she was alive, then I wanted to let her know that I forgave her. Hired a pie to help. I guess she was moved by my story, and so she also ran info for the man my mother was apparently married to, on the house, and with one clue from his report I was able to track them down. I wouldn't have found my mom, alive and was just starting out on recovery after being homeless and addicted for many years, if it wasn't for the pie who kindly ran an extra report for free. Mom has remained sober now for about 7 years and is probably the healthiest she's ever been, physically and emotionally. Next story. Not me, but my grandfather did. He was separated from his brother when the Japanese occupied China. My grandfather safely made it to Hong Kong and eventually to Canada. His brother made it to Singapore or Malaysia according to family friends back then. So my grandfather spent a good 5 years or so working with a pie to find his brother so they can be reunited. Sadly, with just a picture and the fact many people died in the war, it wasn't much to go on. My grandfather is still alive and always thinks of his brother. It's his wish to see him one more time. Edit, provided response in thread below and copied here. Wow, thank you everyone for the kind wishes and suggestions. To let you know, my grandfather worked with this pie many years ago, say between 1999-2004-ish? And maybe a few touch points here and there in the years after. My grandfather was disheartened because he made many trips to Asia over the years thinking this is it. But it just cost more money and got his hopes up. No clue if the brother married, if he even made it to Singapore or Malaysia, or it can be even outside of Asia altogether. Not even sure if he's alive. He would be in his late 80s now, estimated. He has not spoken about it directly with me, just with my mom, his daughter. If I'm being honest, we haven't exactly encouraged him to continue the search either. All my aunts and uncles tell him to move on, and enjoy his time in peace rather than in constant yearning. I don't have the status in the family to overstep my mom and her siblings and start bringing up the past and asking him to consider a DNA kit. If I do, I'd have to do it in secret and consider the emotional investment my grandfather may make. He's not living unhappily by any means. He has a great life and quite accomplished with raising 6 kids to have families/homes of their own. We each take care of him. He has tons of friends, likes to cook, use WeChat to talk to anyone and everyone, travel, pre-COVID, and read. He does want to see his brother, but as time goes by the memory and drive becomes more faint and eventually the day-to-day life just makes it easier for him to accept the circumstances. Next story. I know somebody who was like an assistant to the actual pie. She basically went to bingo with a camera in her purse to capture video of a woman. The woman claimed that a car accident had completely immobilized her. But she would take off the neck brace all the time, playing bingo hours on end. Nothing exciting, just capturing fraud. Next story. I had a girlfriend that worked for one for a while. She said that the majority of their work was insurance scams. She took a lot of pictures of guys who said they were hurt on the job playing golf and surfing and such.